Okay, welcome to the Big Kickoff Sports Bar. We're kind of smiling. It's because we're a bit gutted at the same time, really, aren't we? Yeah, it's the Republic of Ireland beaten 3-2. I'll go with you, Nathan. First of all, just your feelings at the end of the game.
Yeah, look, it's from the result point of view, it's very disappointing. It's the first game in this campaign of the World Cup qualifiers, and that comes with a bit of optimism, doesn't it? Same with anything, any opening day of the season, any opening day of a qualifiers. We're a little bit optimistic, especially when I seen the team sheet. The guys like Hendricks, Brady, McLean not involved. He opted for, I suppose, a little bit of a younger squad, a little bit more inexperienced. The likes of Cullen in there, Malumbi in there, O'Shea in there. So you're hoping if one of these guys can stand out during this campaign, it lift the spirit, certainly. So while it wasn't the worst Irish performance you ever seen, it was probably actually one of the better performances under Stephen Kenny. It was just the result. Yeah, it was really, really disappointing, especially with the last with the late goal by Collins. There was a little bit of suppose, like, maybe you never know what can happen here. We might be able to grab a result, but it just unfortunately wasn't to be. And there wasn't really much urgency either in the last 5 minutes to go chasing a goal. There's a couple of opportunities for James McLean to get the ball in, and the delivery was just really, really poor. And yeah, just disappointing.
Yeah, I'm smiling. Sorry, we have a few messages. If you want to contact us and put up a few messages, yeah, put the comments up there. And if you want to come on to the show, you can also send on your email address, and we'll get you on as well. We have a few comments from Stefan Siptich, and I won't even say the other name, but the Eagle is back. Serbia, we can make it. We are back. Serbia beat Ireland. Welcome back, Dave. Dave, I was just saying we have about 15 messages from Serbian people. Same Serbian person, two of them, loving it. And listen, talk about the Serbian side just for a second, Dave. They look like a nice, neat team. They played the ball around very, very neatly, but there was a little bit more purpose up front.
Yeah, basically, don't ask me to kind of say too many names, but more than likely they ended itch. So overall, yeah, they just have that little bit extra. Obviously, Tadic, you could see once or twice when he jinked and turned, he just had that little bit of extra sharpness that you wouldn't necessarily see in our side. And obviously with Mitrovic, not great form of Fulham, but to be honest, you seen the class with his first finish, looping it over Mark Travers, and then just clever, just hanging off Clark, kind of hanging on to the smaller fullback. And once the ball was in, it was only going to be one winner. It's just clever, simple play. Big guy who's great in the air, and it's just that little tiny difference. One or two balls went in towards long, where if it had been a Mitrovic or somebody of that size, we might have got the goal instead. But just that tiny little extra, like Serbia wouldn't be a million miles ahead of us, but just have that small little extra ingredient, a little bit more technical. But overall, that was just that small fine margin in this game, and unfortunately, his little bit of football and nous was the difference, really.
Okay, Nathan, the starting lineup for, we won't go through Serbia's starting lineup because we'll be only cutting ourselves to pretend, although we know a hell of a lot more about them now. What about the Ireland starting lineup? What did you make of it at the start?
Yeah, I thought I touched on it a little bit earlier. I was happy enough with it, like seeing guys like Hendricks being out, who's been horrendous this season, in my opinion, for Newcastle. McLean, again, hasn't done an awful lot for Ireland in the past number of years. You could say the same with Robbie Brady. But yeah, I was happy enough. I know it looked like a 3-5-2, which I think I said a couple of times, whether it be on the podcast, that I'd like to see that. I think that'd be a good way to incorporate both Seamus Coleman and Matt Doherty into the team, which we've seen today. But then there was a little bit of confusion because RTE had it set up as a 4-3-3, which would have been bizarre, in my opinion, having Matt Doherty playing that like forward up the pitch. So yeah, to see, and in fairness, my fears are put to rest. As soon as the kickoff came, you could see the lineup straight away. It was three at the back. So now, yeah, it was starting 11 wise. I suppose it's the best probably what he had to play with. It's in fairness to Stephen Kenny, you can't take away the fact that he's been extremely unlucky during his tenure. With injuries and illnesses and things like that. Like guys stepping down off his coaching staff, the likes of Damien Duff and Alan Kelly. So, like, I know it's not to blame. You can't solely blame bad luck on the results either. But it is, it's a factor. It has to be a factor. So again, coming leading into this game, there was a lot of injury issues. We know, obviously, the goalkeeping injuries and things like that. And guys like John Egan, key players for the Ireland team, are missing. So, yeah, I think the starting 11, in my opinion, was probably one of the best that he could have picked out of the players that were available to him.
Okay. Stefan hopes Ireland and Serbia qualify. We also hope Ireland and Serbia qualify.
He's hopeful.
Yeah, well,
Stefan.
Portugal might have something to say about that.
Somebody I can think of that can have something to say about that.
Yeah, that's my
Dave, back five, I suppose, when you're defending, back three when you're attacking. It was something that I wanted to see because I thought it suited our players. What did you reckon with?
Yeah, I think just going quickly back to Nathan's thing, the confusion with the 4-3-3, I think, was down to that's when UEFA released it. They had it down as a 4-3-3, but thankfully, as we all knew, it was a 5-3-2 without the ball, and then a 3-5-2 when we had it. So definitely, you could see it wasn't just a sit and contain kind of team from the first 10 or 15 minutes. You could see we were trying to push men forward. Brown was even going in to support Robinson and Connolly in the press up front. But even our press at the start was quite clever. It wasn't just that needless runs that we've seen so many of our players do and just run ourselves into the ground for about 60 minutes and then we tail off. We were able to we were a bit clever and a bit more smarter. But I'll rob what Richie Sadlier said before the game. It was when you looked at the team initially, it was exciting, and it was something where, Jesus, this clicks. This could really set us up and really get a momentum going. So yeah, I was definitely excited beforehand. Wasn't necessarily jumping through hoops saying we're going to do anything spectacular, but I was just definitely pleasantly pleased.
Do you think it clicked? Because you said if it clicks, do you think it clicked?
Oh, before the game, yeah. To an extent, yeah, I would say so. Now there was little moments, but to be honest, that's because we're still not got our probably full 11. We, as Nathan alluded to, we were missing a few players, so I think we made the best 11 that we could. So to say it clicked, I think to an extent, yes, but it could click that bit better with one or two other players in the side. Although, in fairness, I don't think anyone necessarily played themselves out of the team tonight, to be honest.
I think if we're looking at a click, and I was probably mostly impressed in the opening half an hour. I thought the shape was brilliant, especially with the midfield three. I thought Cullen, Brown and Malumbi had a decent game in the opening half an hour. We made it difficult for Serbia to break us down. You know, we were moving side to side and moving with them and closing up any the challenge for them. So yeah, the opening half an hour was the real time in the game where it really clicked for me, and I thought everybody was on the same page.
Okay, the first goal goes in, Dave. It's Brown, Matt Doherty on the right-hand side. Brown's after winning the ball, gives it to Matt Doherty. Matt Doherty, for the second time in a row, hit the ball right in behind the centre forwards. But luckily enough, it fell to Brown, whipped it out wide, eventually came to Robinson, little dink into the back post, and Brown was back in there again. And I think he did deserve his man of the match award on the Irish side. But the goal was, I suppose, what Ireland were doing the whole game when they were on the ball. They were searching, they were probing, they were looking to try and get through the team a lot more than we ever did before. So it's a good sign.
1,000,000%. Like when all is said and done, you have to try and take some positives. And everyone and their mother before the game, we've only scored 1 in 8 games. Well, we got 2 today, and that one alone was enough to kind of say happy days. There's something to clutch onto coming up against Luxembourg on Saturday. But it was just Brown in the first half especially just really seemed to enjoy his role, but was very relaxed in the role. Didn't look nervous, didn't look like it was too big for him. It was very much, I'm allowed to get in there, I'm allowed to get involved. And he more than helped in the defensive side of things on the front, turn it almost into a front three when it was a press. But it was a lovely little ball out onto the left, kept it nice and cool, and then just drifted in on the back post and sat up lovely by Robinson. So, you know, he definitely impressed. Cullen definitely looked like he kind of got around the covering everything left to right from time to time. Malumbi was kind of the quieter of the three, but sometimes that happens. He's kind of just in the right positions, but he's not necessarily grabbing the headlines, if you know what I mean, by making the last ditch tackle or making the assist through the thing. So he was kind of doing maybe the tankless job of the three. But you know, that's exactly what we were looking for. You could see Malumbi went to put it down the channel, and Connolly didn't really make the run. Now Connolly had a bit of a moan, but I think that was more him kind of maybe realising what he should have done. But it was good to see that it wasn't that just aimless punt up front. Now we did it when we had to, but there was a lot. It's like the guys are starting to get a little bit confident and starting to believe that they can do it, which is all we want. And then we competed tonight. That's the ultimate thing. Serbia are on our level, maybe a slight little nugget ahead of us, but we competed, and that's the ultimate thing to take from this. And hopefully it doesn't dent the confidence going into Saturday, which will be no picnic.
Yeah, a couple of comments. I'll go back to Stefan. Thanks for sticking by, Stefan.
Good man,
your biggest problem, Nate, I'll ask you to do this. When your biggest problem is the midfield didn't give 100%. I don't know if I can necessarily agree with that.
No.
What I would say is that the midfield got tired very quickly in the second half.
Yeah, I think you're seeing it probably got progressively worse and worse as the Serbian goals went in. I thought, especially for the third goal, the Mitrovic header, the build-up play it was just too easy for Serbia. You know, it was too easy to pass the ball around. There was nobody tracking runners in the midfield, nobody coming back. So yeah, I'd agree with that to that. But I wouldn't have pointed out the Irish midfield as the big issue for this game. I think the main issue, obviously, it's obviously going forward. I thought we were really, really light up front. Even when in fairness, now I know we pulled it back and we got a goal late in the game, but we went 2-1 down. Personally, I struggled to see who was going to step up and grab a goal for us. Yeah, going forward is going to be the issue. Even like the likes of Connolly, like was poor tonight. It was even guys were up there like Robinson again, very quiet. Shane Long coming off the bench done well enough, but there's nobody you can see in that squad that's going to come in and get a consistent run of goals and even get you 4 or 5 goals during this qualifying campaign. So that would be the big worry for me, obviously, and that was a big worry of many people coming into this game. As Dave said, you know, people are alluding to the 7-8 game run where we haven't been scoring goals. So yeah, the midfield wasn't the issue for me. I think it was the lightness up top.
Yeah. Stephen Hogan made a comment. I'm going to I'll bring that up now in a second. But just on Aaron Connolly, for the first half, I thought that he was the only one who didn't really. I know he worked his socks off. He worked hard. He blocked all the angles like the rest of the team were. But when we were on the ball, he didn't look sharp. He didn't look alive to anything, and he seemed to be giving out, which is always a bad sign, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, like I actually have it in one of my notes. He's a bit of a Craig Bellamy. He always seems to be biting or snapping at somebody or having a moan or having a pop, and it's like, Jesus. Now, he had about 3 shades.
Craig Bellamy was just a moany shit.
Yeah,
he?
well,
no, in fairness.
But in fairness, it's not a flash in the pan with Connolly.
I'm not sure. I think it looked like frustration to me from Connolly. I don't know if he was 100%. Yeah,
well, he wasn't. He hadn't played, and he was out of the side with a slight knock with Brighton. So they, what did Kenny say during the week? He was slightly undercooked, which usually is a kind of the term for he's just not quite there. But he obviously thought he was good enough for at least the 60 minutes, 70 minutes. But sure, he pulled up a cramp after 65, so that should tell you he wasn't there for a full 90. So in that sense, but he obviously I presume fits the way Kenny wants to play, and otherwise, if the system must be more important, because otherwise Shane Long would have played, because he has been playing week in, week out for Bournemouth. In my opinion, I think he's going to be very much an impact sub if that's going to be his new role, I'd imagine.
Or was it Dave? Sorry, was it just the case that he wanted to show everyone this is the new era? The old lads aren't in. That's it now. This is the new era, and I'm starting with these, and we're going to progress with these. And it's not even about this tournament; it's probably about the next tournament.
Exactly, and I'm not going to argue with that either. That's exactly what it could be. 100%. And I suppose, that's exactly it. Like, because like Adam Ida, like he went with him for the few of the games where everyone was going, I'm not sure here now. So that very much stacks in for what your point there. So I suppose I'd have to kind of side with that, to be honest. But it's definitely a changing of the guard. It's a bit like McCarthy's first time. Remember when he played the Robbie Keanes and Duffs of this world? There's definitely that feeling of the selection today. And going off what you're saying there, there's probably going to be much of the same now for the rest of the campaign. And with a bit of luck, we stay in it till the end. But we'll see what happens.
Nate, now look, that you were talking about the centre forward roles, that there wasn't much up there attacking wise, albeit Robinson with the goal. He did well holding the ball up. He collected a lot of frees. Connolly very much less so. But the way they played when they were defending, they played a 5, they played a 2 in midfield sitting, they played one in between two wide centre forwards. So the two wide centre forwards were between the centre back and the full backs or the wing backs. So they were wide. Anytime we won the ball, they were isolated away from each other. So there was never a chance to link up. Now, obviously, that's Brown's job to go and link them up. But you're never going to get that link with the two of them in that style. So there is a lot for Brown to do in that role, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, in fairness. And to Brown's credit, I thought he done the best of what he could have. You know, as you said, he was given man of the match on the Irish side of things. And yeah, richly deserved. Yeah, so it's difficult to do. You know, I'd be interested to see maybe how James Collins gets on, even as a central striker. If he was to play against Luxembourg, you know, he's a bigger, more physical striker. Probably the biggest striker that we have in the squad at the moment. But yeah, I suppose, I agree with a lot what you said there. It's a lot of tough work for Brown to be doing, and especially when you're relying on, I know we didn't really play a lot of long balls, but there was a lot of hopeful balls up to Connolly, and you're relying on him getting the end of them where the movement was quite poor at times for Connolly. You know, he was probably going a little bit too late, like he alluded to the Malumbi ball early in the game, you know. At first look, I thought it was a poor ball by Malumbi, but it was actually just poor movement by Connolly. You know, he was very slow off the mark and wasn't quick enough on getting off.
Yeah. The goal, David, a little ball over the top, little header, flick on, gets in behind O'Shea, and nice finish in all fairness. But really and truly, when you look at that goal, and I've looked at it back a couple of times, and they didn't mention it on the commentary, Seamus Coleman was marking no one, stepped up like a fullback probably would step up, left that gap for him to run into, and there was no need for Coleman to go forward. I would be, and we don't put blame on anyone, but we know on the second goal we're going to have to talk about it. So on the first goal we're going to have to talk about, and I think Coleman gave that space just by that little bit of movement. Well, whether he even knew he was doing it or not, but he's not used to that centre back role. All saying that though, I thought he was excellent still in there.
Yeah, no, he didn't really do much wrong, and as he said, like if anything, like, you know, it's just a positional sense that with a bit more experience, but it just all happened a bit nice and quick. It was like two quick passes. Like obviously into Tadic, quick flick, and then Vlahovic. Is it Vlahovic? We'll go with Vlahovic. I think just a very quick pass, but he was just off the shoulder of Dara O'Shea. Dara O'Shea literally hadn't got a, you know, tiny bit sharper possibly, but it was also quick. Bang! It was in the back of net for O'Shea. But as you said, Coleman had been a bit deeper, that mightn't have come about, and between the two of them, they could have swallowed them up. But it's nitpicking. It was just that quick kind of caught them cold kind of move. Two quick passes, one quick flick, and then a decent finish. Travers couldn't do much about it.
No. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go through a couple of the comments here, and thanks very much for everyone who's putting in comments. None of these will be Stefan. All right, Stefan, give everyone else a chance. Nathan seems, you know this man. Stephen Hogan. Duffy can't start next game on that performance. Yes, no.
Duffy can't start that next game.
In other words, the back line actually did fairly well.
Oh, right. Sorry, Jesus. I thought I got that wrong. I was like, was Duffy playing? Jesus Christ.
You got
didn't notice that, you may not make it back onto the next show.
I was like, did I miss something there? In fairness, you can't make too many arguments about the back.
Okay, let's have a look at it. Seamus Coleman. I thought Seamus Coleman barely got the first goal. I thought he did everything really, really well. There was a lot of last-ditch tackles, a lot of headers. I thought he covered very well, swept in behind a couple of times when probably Mark Travers maybe could have came out a couple of times. But I thought actually Seamus Coleman did the right thing clearing it, and I thought probably was Seamus's to do. You had O'Shea, I thought was excellent in the back line.
One of the best.
There wasn't much he did wrong. And of course, Kieran Clark, I didn't think did too much wrong in the back line either. I thought the three of them were very, very solid. So for a poor Seamus or Duffy this year, it's very hard to see him get back in.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's Duffy's another player that's in the squad that is struggling at his club, you know. And yeah, if we're going off the performance of the three lads tonight, I agree with Steve. It's actually Steve's one of my best mates. So I'm not just agreeing with him for that, but yeah. Steve knows I'd agree with him on a lot of things when it comes to football, but yeah, it'd be hard to make a case for Shane Duffy, because he would just take out of them three. Like Dave said, nobody played himself out of the team. You know, there was none of them three guys done overly acting wrong. Like where Clark went about his business, probably the quietest out of the three, but even at that, he didn't put a foot wrong. And I've seen Steele's other comment as well about Mark Travers, and in fairness, I would agree. I thought Travers had an absolute stinker tonight. I really, really did, and it fell for the lad. Another player he's just not getting in at Bournemouth. He looked nervous tonight. He looked unsure of himself. There was a lot of heavy moments for him there tonight, and you could see the lads just playing with a little bit of confidence that just isn't there at the moment. And I think it really did show tonight for Travers.
Yeah. I'm not sure how many. We'll talk about the second goal and absolutely with the second goal, but I'm not too sure there was anything else he could have done with any of the other goals. I'm not too sure there was anything he could have done with any of the corners. Some of the corners that were whipped in by Tadic were unbelievable quality. So a couple of hesitant moments, I would say. So
more so hesitant, yeah.
I think you might be harsh about how horrendous he was, but he certainly wasn't. He was a little nervous, I definitely think. Anyhow, that's for one thing. We'll talk about that second goal.
Is Stephen a Pat supporter as well, Nathan?
He was when we won the league. Yeah,
says it all. Says it all.
Okay,
between 2013 and 2014.
Dave, you can answer this one. Matt Finlay, lack of quality in final third is always going to be our problem. Bringing Hendrick on gives us nothing. Why not give Knight a shot when he's playing week in, week out?
Yeah.
I have nothing to add to that. Absolutely. Other than I would agree. Hendrick, he's the conundrum. He's the Rubik's Cube that none of us can figure out, and he still gets into the team. He frustrates a lot of people in an Ireland jersey. I don't care what he does at club. It is a different game, but with Ireland, he's not since the Euros back in 2016 have I really been ever impressed with him in a green jersey. Somebody might tell me a game in between that, and that's fair enough, but that's what I can remember. Yeah, I would very much go with somebody who's playing week in, week out, and is getting great game time with Derby and impressing. And we've been one of their main men without a shadow of a doubt. I'd agree with that, especially if the fact that I just don't think there's any solving Hendrick. It's one of them where, a bit like what you said earlier, start removing somebody old guard, and maybe Knight it could be the next one.
Yeah. So that's why it was a bit of a head scratcher, wasn't it, when he brought Hendricks on and not Knight? So yeah, it's a good point. Neil Dobbs, take Tadic out of that team and we're on par. He's different class. We don't have that quality. Big game Saturday. Nathan, it's not really a big game on Saturday. If we can't win on Saturday, forget about it. But does Neil have a point? We'd be on par with if they hadn't got Tadic?
I don't think so. I think the strength and depth in that Serbian squad really showed. They're winning guys like Mitrovic off the bench. Look, you can say what you will about him this season in the Premier League, but if you're winning that quality of player off the bench, they've definitely. I know that was a depleted Ireland squad, but I think even with a full Ireland squad, the strength and depth in that Serbian team, it's better than what we have at our disposal. I thought the lad up top, Vlahovic, was a real nuisance. He's 21 years old. He's a big physical guy. You can see why a lot of teams are looking at him. He's doing okay with Florentina over in Serie A this season. So, yeah, I think they're a little bit ahead of us at the moment in terms of quality. There's a couple of other lads on the bench that, like Dave, I tend to be a bit of a Paul Merson when it comes to foreign names. I'm not going to attempt to take a stab at, but yeah, for me, they're just a little bit above the quality of the Ireland squad at the moment.
Okay, right. Second half, Connolly's taken down, or maybe. I shouted for it, I have to say. It, but when I see the replay, I wasn't really convinced. What do you reckon, Dave? Yeah,
the first replay, it looks like the defender gets the touch. The second replay, kind of behind the two of them, you kind of go, oh, I'm not sure. Same as you. As soon as I seen a penalty, and then when he didn't give it, I was giving out, going, if it was the other way around, he'd have given it, because I thought they got a little bit more than what we did. But I think that's something that's been around for years. When you look at the kind of the British Islands and the Republic team, what they seem to be physical, and I find they get a few free kicks against them that they shouldn't. But then when they're fouled, it's almost like it's a dive or so. I don't know. It's very strange. There was a couple of instances where we didn't get them, but then they did.
Tell me this, Dave. Did you miss VAR on that one?
You could, because the angle with the one behind kind of put a bit of doubt in it.
But I didn't care. That's why we won't go into the whole VAR thing, but I didn't care. No, that was the decision. I was happy enough with that.
Yeah. I'm not sitting here feeling like we were robbed or anything like that. Absolutely. So there's another case for VAR, but that's another day. But it looked like he got the touch, but it was just that other angle behind you kind of went, oh, I'm not too sure. But it happened that quick. Obviously we're Irish fans, but it happened that quick. I wouldn't have been surprised if the ref had given it. But I think down the other end, it might have been a little bit different.
Did anybody notice Colin Robson called for VAR when it happened? So did he went
I didn't see that.
He was going over. He was making the suggestion. Like, Colin, stop now. Actually, 1 second. While I have is actually, I have a bit of an update over the confusion that I had with Duffy. Stephen just texted me to say, sorry lads, I meant to say Doherty shouldn't be playing in the next game over that performance, not Duffy.
Right.
So there's a bit of a communicational issue in the sports bar this evening.
Well, we're not going back to it now. Get it right, Stephen. All right, in the first place.
Yeah.
Hendricks came on for Malumbi. Connolly came off for Shane Long came on. I mean, Connolly getting cramp probably shouldn't happen. Malumbi, Dave, did you think you were getting tired anyhow? It's just the Hendricks situation, really, isn't it?
Yeah, like I'd say it was just maybe freshening up a little bit, just putting in fresh legs in midfield. But we were all surprised it was Hendrick. As I said, Malumbi was the quietest of the three, but I think it's because of the role he was in. He was kind of helping out Brown, but then obviously helping out. He was the in-between man by the looks of it. So he wasn't exactly getting stuff that was making us notice, if you know what I mean. But I think it was just a bit of a freshen of the legs, but we were just very surprised that was Hendrick instead of obviously potentially Knight that we talked about earlier.
Okay, now, Nathan, we're going to go on to the goal, the second goal. Mitrovic, I could see this happening in slow motion. Once the ball was played through and I seen Mark come off his line, he didn't come off his line, he came off a good bit off his line. The minute I seen him that far out and I seen the ball played through, it's like, don't think him. It's just in my head, please don't think him. Yeah. And then I seen him backpedaling, and you kind of, most players probably wouldn't do it anyhow. But he attempted it and he tried it, and well, what a finish.
Great finish, yeah. And not only a great finish, but great build-up play between Mitrovic, Tadic and Vlahovic. The three of them were really good when he linked up together. They were the three players, particularly Tadic, as you mentioned. They were the three that really stood out for me for Serbia. But yeah, unfortunately for Mark Travers, he was just caught in no man's land, wasn't he? But look, not to take away from Mitrovic, it's they're tough goals to score, the ones that look easy when you pin them in FIFA, but to do them in real life, they're tough to pull off. And it was a perfect the perfect chip, perfect weight on it, perfect distance. It really was. And look, obviously it's going to be easy, and it's going to be probably right as well to point the finger at Travers and say, what was he doing so far off his line and in the complete no man's land the way he was. But the finish, you can't take away from the finish, and you can't take away from the build-up at all. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. No, listen, I think Mark could even stand up himself and say, listen, what was I doing that far off his line?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, Dave, it seems Nathan put his very heavy-handed thoughts on Mark's performance. Do you go with that? Do you think that he was, what was the word you used, Nathan?
Hairy.
Oh, I think you've downgraded there now. What do you think, Dave, of his performance overall?
He didn't have too much to do in the general passage of play, but there was times where, he did look a bit on the nervy side. There was one time he had the ball and he's looking around for it, and I wouldn't necessarily be critical of it, but all of a sudden, I think it was O'Shea or one of them was literally standing beside him looking for the ball, because he was kind of looking left and right and kind of didn't know where to go. But he didn't have a hell of a lot in the first 45 minutes. There's nothing he could do for the goal. So whatever nerves he had, thankfully we didn't have to see too much of it. Yeah, he kind of jumped into the post, but in fairness, it was a very brave attempt to go for it. He kind of stepped out a little bit too much and kind of called Tadic's bluff. Tadic went for it and nearly got it. I wouldn't call that down to nerves. That was just him kind of wanting to be in the mixer. So I wouldn't be too critical of him in that half. The second half, listen, the lob goal is what's going to stick out more than anything. But other than that, I don't think there was massive headline grabbing things for me to really stick it. Like, he's going to get a 5-6 at best, if you know what I mean, for that one goal, for the goal alone. But other than that, it was obviously going to be a nervy game. This is the biggest game he's ever played. But
do you think, Dave, do you think that he actually had much to do? And this is what I'm talking about with the whole game. Even though we've conceded 3 goals and punished for the mistakes that we made, they didn't have very many efforts on goal other than that. And Mark Travers didn't have much to do. He made one save in the first half near half time. And I can't remember anything else that he had to deal with, bar a few goal kicks. And I think once he came out near the end, where he gathered up a ball. But I think he did okay, but he did look nervous. And listen, he needs to get more game time under his belt. That's 100% sure. He needs to be playing. He was playing with Swindon. He could do with going back out again. I don't know what the club are doing. Bournemouth are doing, stick him on the bench and not playing him. It's not going to help him at all. So, but I do think there was bigger things in the game that were a problem, and we talked about it in the midfield. Nathan, the next goal, Mitrovic header, talk us through it.
Classic Mitrovic goal, isn't it? When you think of him, you think of the majority of the goals that he scored in the Premier League, a lot of the good ones are from headers, you know. He's a big physical guy. Probably, I forget who was marking him now, probably able to help me out here, was that O'Shea was sticking with him, and he was lost him a little bit.
He peeled off O'Shea and then stood beside Stevens. And once a centre forward does that, you're literally asking for it to be popped in, you know.
So again, like that, you're sort of nitpicking a little bit, but yeah, look, if you're going to be looking at anyone, that's going to be O'Shea. Like, he did peel off him a little bit too easy, and like you said, looking fair, like I know I was a little bit critical of Travers, and I stand by that. It's there was nothing he could have done here, you know. There really wasn't, you know. It was an ideal header, send it back where it came from, down and low. Nothing he could have done. And
I was said in commentary, we're not closing down, we're not pressing. I think that's what happened. I just think we got very, very tired as the game went on. We couldn't put the same effort that they did in the first half. There's all sorts of questions why that is and why they weren't as tired. Obviously, when you have the ball for a large amount of times, you're not chasing it as much. So, you know, there's still a lot to work on, still a lot to build on. Dave, is there anything you'd change if you were Stephen Kenny? If he's going to go back now, he's looking at the game against Luxembourg, obviously a hugely different game. It's nothing. There's no comparison because Serbia are a good quality side. And comment in there, another from Lufty. I hope that Serbia and Ireland win against Portugal and go on. For Ireland to go on and beat a Portugal to beat a Serbia, where are they going to have to go to? What's going to have to change, or is it just experience that's needed?
Yeah, there's a bit of experience. I know what you just said there about tiredness and stuff. There's a couple of our lads who aren't playing regular at the minute, and there's a big difference. We can train all you want, but there's a big difference when you're out in that field, because the brain, you know yourself, when you're out on that pitch, you do 3 or 4 minutes of intense running around. All of a sudden, you're breathing out your backside. It's a completely different session to training. And unfortunately, we have a few players on that field today. So in relation to Saturday, there's not a lot you can change because of our current personnel and players are missing. I don't think there's a hell of a lot we could maybe do. Maybe Collins, to an extent, to have that bit of height if we are going to start going down wide and whipping it in. And that's something that I know we technically are going to be a bit of a, like on paper, a better side than Luxembourg, but that's where I think we'll get the better goals instead of trying to be overly cultured and play it all through nicey stuff. Do the nice stuff, but when we get wide, whip it in. That's somebody like a Collins to start doing what he does best. So that might be the only change for me. I don't think anyone's really played themselves out of it. Travers, I don't think there's going to be much choice. It's like Bazunu or O'Hara. It's going to be much of the same. So there's no point in saying he has to go or anything like that. I think he'll probably start again. So that would be the only one for me in relation to that sense. But as regards Serbia and Portugal, mate, we have to split them. Like Portugal, I think even Serbia will understand that we all expect Portugal to top that group. So the only way it's going to work for us now, hopefully Portugal do the double on them and we beat them at home, and then we have to win every game almost, because there's only 8 games. It's very little room for error. We have to, unfortunately, try and do the double on Azerbaijan and Luxembourg, beat Serbia, and then get anything we can against Portugal, anything.
So Nathan, you're looking at the games, just like Dave has just said there now, you're looking at the games, you really, really want to win those double headers, maybe get something off Portugal, but if you don't, and you're looking for Portugal to do it against Serbia, you're looking at nearly a one-off game. Can you beat Serbia and hope that goal difference or whatever goes your way? It's kind of, we've put ourselves under a bit of pressure right from the start, haven't we?
Yeah, I think obviously in an ideal world we could have picked up a draw tonight and beat Luxembourg on Saturday, which it should be. Like, if we're dropping points to the likes of Luxembourg and Azerbaijan, even with a depleted Ireland squad, serious questions will be asked, and rightfully so. You know, these are sides that we shouldn't be dropping any points to. With definitely a much better squad than those two. But yeah, look, in an ideal world, we could have got something tonight. It was always going to be a difficult game, you know. Serbia away, they were a good side, and it was like even leading up to the game and looking at a lot of people's predictions, nobody really asking for a win here. A lot of people would have been snapped your hand off for a draw before the game. So, yeah, it's a difficult start. It's a difficult place to go, and the result, it won't do us any favours now with only 8 games in the group.
Okay, Dave, Stephen Kenny, he hadn't a great start, albeit it's probably the worst bad luck of any manager of all time with all the injuries he's had since he's gone in there. So it's been a disaster with the whole COVID. But when you look at Stephen Kenny now, how his teams have played, even though they weren't scoring goals, he's lost again today. Is there going to be pressure put on him, or do you think that time is going to be given? And I'll ask a second part of that. Is he going to get given time to go on to another tournament as well?
That's $1 million question, because, I think the whole video malarkey against England, there's probably a bit of a split, I'd say. There's a few people who wouldn't mind seeing the back of him, who are ignorant. Typical, what's a League of Ireland manager doing? That's all he is. And, a bit similar to with Brian Kerr. So he is under pressure, not necessarily, hopefully, with the right people, but there will be people ready and waiting to stick that knife in, I'd imagine. Without knowing the full story, I'd say that was one of the reasons why it kind of came out. I'd say there was people trying to stir the pot. I don't think any of us are going to be putting him under any great pressure. You will have, I'd say, there's still enough support from at the moment in relation to fans. There will be a couple who want us to go back into sitting deep and scraping everything we can and then just doing Trapp and O'Neill type stuff, because that's all we're good for, which I don't agree with. But he will be under a bit of pressure. I think there was enough done today to people to sit back still, but Saturday is a massive game in that sense. I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, far from it. This side, we're not far off League C and Nations League, and they were actually quite impressive against Azerbaijan. And Montenegro, they've done a great job away from home, beating them. I'm not saying I've told you so, but it's not going to be a walk in the park against them. So a win at all costs is massive, but I hope we perform well as well, because this could be a game where, if we don't perform well and still only win 1-0, it could be enough to bring some of these people out of the woodwork. But hopefully, I think we did enough tonight for enough people to sit back. But there, yourself, right? There's always going to be there's enough of them in the shadows ready to go. But he probably, a bold prediction, I'd say he would maybe have to get to playoffs to get another one. I don't agree with it, but that's my fear, and I've said it a few times when we've had shows. I think he needs to get to the playoffs minimum, because I think, unfortunately, enough supporters in the FEI might do enough to get him out, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, and bring John Toshak in or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, George says, we wish Mitrovic played like that for Fulham. George, we wish Mitrovic played for Ireland, I suppose. That probably counteracts that one. Nate, we'll finish off. Are you still a believer of Stephen Kenny?
Yeah, look, it's like Dave said, I was with the League of Ireland background. He's always going to get a little bit of extra goodwill, I think, from League of Ireland fans. Well, he is from me anyway. There was positives tonight. There was positives, and we talked about a lot of the positives here tonight. A goal being probably the main one, but yeah, there was a little. There was. You could I hate saying it, but you can see the improvements in the style of play. You can see the improvements in terms of bringing in the younger guys and slowly phasing out the old guard. But he's not doing it dramatically. He's doing it the right way. He's going about it the right way. He's slowly starting to introduce these guys, and he's slowly starting to take the likes of Hendricks out of the team and things like that. Yeah, look, I'd like to see him get this whole campaign. I'd like to see him getting all the qualifiers, and I agree with Dave. As much as I don't want it, I think he'll have to get to the playoffs already. Sure, after his first 2 games, people were calling for his head already and slating the guy. It's still very early days, but yeah, I'm still a fan of Stephen Kenny as an Ireland manager. It's a massive game now on Saturday. I think if they have to win on Saturday. I think even if it's a poor performance, there will be a lot of backlash. But if Ireland drop points on Saturday, I think there'll be a major backlash. But yeah, I'd like to see Stephen Kenny get this whole campaign, and who knows, if it goes well, I'd like to see him stay in the long term.
Yeah, okay. Have a look at our website, thebigkickoff.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. everywhere. Have a look at us. Go and connect up. We have our podcast, football podcasts, League of Ireland podcast. Go again, have a look at that. If you have friends and family who likes Irish football, who likes League of Ireland football, get them to subscribe. And we'll see everyone next week. Thanks for everyone who got involved today. Thanks for everyone who sent in messages. Thanks, David. Thanks, Nathan. And hopefully on Saturday, we'll have something good to talk about. Talk to you then.
Bye, folks.